How does one even begin a review for a movie that is of this magnitude? One that I've looked forward to for so long, possibly what has become one of the most anticipated movies of all time for me. Even before I saw it, just off of the early buzz and my confidence in director Denis Villeneuve, I was nearly certain that I would give it a perfect score. Coming out of the theater, experiencing 70mm IMAX film, all of those hopes and feelings were solidified, and Dune Part Two is not only one of the greatest movie experiences I've ever had, it is a worthy follow-up to Part One and an amazing continuation in the series. So let's jump in, let's talk about everything we can in this review for Dune Part 2. Welcome. Once again, my name is Austin, and kicking things off, I want to talk about this incredible 70mm IMAX experience I got to have. I had never seen any movie in a true, real IMAX experience. Getting to experience Dune Part 2 in 70mm IMAX film is easily the greatest movie experience I've had in my entire life. I was incredibly blessed that one of the 12 theaters in the entire world, not just country, in the whole world, were showing the 70mm IMAX film print of this movie, and one of those theaters was 3 hours away from me. Some would say that's a really long ways to drive for a movie, but for me, that was absolutely worth the drive, worth the experience and the trip. The people who I got to experience this movie with absolutely loved it. We've enjoyed hours of conversation since seeing the film and just diving into its details and its themes and all of the different aspects of this movie we loved. So the IMAX experience itself was absolutely incredible. I'll be playing some clips here that I got inside of the theater. Obviously nothing of the movie itself, but I just wanted to be able to kind of show you what it would look like to actually go to a 70mm IMAX theater and experience this movie. I was absolutely floored when we walked into the auditorium. You actually enter at the bottom of the theater as opposed to from the back or from the middle like in a traditional theater, and you just see this towering screen above you. It was just a humbling experience to walk in and see something so massive. There were hundreds of seats filling the theater. The seats were not the recliners, but they were very comfortable at the same time. And one of the really cool things about it as well is it wasn't just the 1:90 aspect ratio for this IMAX experience. Because it was the 70mm film, it got to go to the 1:43 tall square screen. And this screen in particular, at this theater, we went to the Indiana State Museum, and they had a 84-foot tall by 84-foot wide screen. And this movie has ruined any other theatrical experience I will ever have. There will be never anything that will top getting to see a movie in this kind of format and this kind of experience. They have a 12,000 watt sound system in there that was just booming. You could feel it in your chest with the music, and the sound was incredible. The visuals were fantastic. I don't remember, if at all, the last time I saw a movie on film. Most movie experiences I've had in my life have been on digital. So it was really cool to get to experience a film theatrical experience, at least from the point that I actually can recognize it and appreciate it. I may have seen some when I was younger when going to the movies, but it's something that I actually enjoy and appreciate the work that goes into that. Getting to see the grain of the film on there just bring the screen to life even more, and all of the visuals that this movie includes. It's a fantastic experience. If you are within hours of driving distance to go to an IMAX theater, whether it is the digital or that 70mm IMAX, I implore you, you definitely got to go check it out. It's the greatest experience I've ever had in a theater, and this is the movie to do it for. Now, jumping into the movie itself and my review of it, I wrestled for days over how do I actually even review a movie that I've been so highly anticipating and so loved coming out of the movie, but to actually put your thoughts to paper or just quantify them in some kind of way to make coherent sentences about it. that took a while. So I've discussed this movie with a number of friends of mine, a number of coworkers and people that have also enjoyed it as much as I did. And let's jump in starting with the story. So what's really cool about the way that these movies so far have been structured is they're essentially kind of like the Lord of the Rings of sci-fi, in that each movie picks up pretty much where the last one left off so far. We'll see where things go in part 3, but for now, I love that this movie just picks up pretty much right where the last one left off. It's maybe been a day or two, if that. It might even just be later that day of this one, and we just get to roll right into the story. I love the whole introduction of Dune Part 1 and getting introduced in the world of Arrakis and the politics of all of these different houses and the Emperor, the Harkonnen, the Baron, and the House Atreides, all of that stuff. I love getting introduced to it, but the fact that we just get to jump in and we are whisked away to this world and get to experience it on a whole nother level is an incredible experience. This movie opens up the world of Arrakis and the Fremen, especially the culture. We get to dive into more with their prophecies, their religion, their cultures, their ways of life. We get a better understanding of this sanctity and reverence that they have for water on this planet. We got kind of a sample of it in part 1, but this movie really hones into why they consider water to be so sacred in a world like Dune. So not only do we get that additional world building, we get the expansion of the story and the scope of everything throughout as we introduce more characters, more cultures, and all that kind of stuff. We get to experience that in a very, very well structured story. I think the pacing for this movie is really fantastic. It essentially kind of goes back and forth between here's some conflict and action, and then we're going to jump into some drama, some story, some world building, but all of it complements one another and it all flows and progresses the story. There's not a scene or a shot in this movie that is wasted when it comes to the story. It's all progressing it or adding to the quality of it all in an incredible way. For much of the first half of this movie, we are following Paul and his mother Jessica, Lady Jessica of the Bene Gesserit, as they're kind of getting inundated into this Fremen culture. Paul is beginning his journey to become Muad'Dib or Usul, the many names that he'll become known by. So he is becoming integrated into the world and the culture of Stilgar's siege, of his culture and his people, while at the same time Lady Jessica, Paul's mother, is now getting inundated and brought up as this next reverent mother for their group as well. And so they're kind of each going on their own separate paths, but they're very much intersecting along the way and eventually clash towards the end of this movie in extraordinary ways that I absolutely loved for the story. So getting to see Paul's journey continue. I love the kind of early stages that we got in part 1 of this, of his reluctance to be this brave and powerful leader and follow and fill his father's footsteps, and that fear that he's had. But now with his father gone, you're moving into this next stage where he actually has to take on this responsibility and stuff, partially because of these prophecies that have been foretold of this role that he's kind of being forced into taking on. And so all of that adds so much depth to his character and the intricacies that are to do with his personality and his arc and his development. And like I said, Lady Jessica, his mother, plays a huge role in that, of kind of forcing him into this role to fulfill that prophecy that he never really wanted to be a part of. And so eventually he is forced to just kind of embrace that and lean into it entirely. It goes in incredible directions. I'll spoil a few things along the way, but I'm going to do my best not to get into too many major things. But I love the direction that we get to go with his character, right? Seemingly, especially from part 1, starts off thinking, hey, we're going to, follow this hero's journey type thing, which is great. I love a good classic hero's journey, but definitely in this part 2, we're subverting those expectations of Paul's growth and his development of his character. And he's going down a little bit more of a darker path. In some ways, you could say, some people have compared him to like a Luke Skywalker type character of this new hero's journey type thing, where he's a bit more of like an Anakin Skywalker, where he's kind of teetering that anti-hero type role that he's fulfilling. And so all of that makes his character so interesting. It's becoming one of my favorite characters of all time as we further explore it in these movies. I can't wait to see what they do next in part 3. I have read Dune and Dune Messiah, so I know essentially where the story's going, but Denis has chosen to take some creative liberties with where they're going with the story and some of their characters along the way. So I'm very interested to see where we're going to continue going with his character, because I think it's so compelling and interesting, and a way that is refreshing as far as a traditional main protagonist would carry on this type of film. I touched briefly on a couple of the themes throughout this one, but I want to go a little bit deeper on them. I think one of the things I loved most about this movie is the themes and kind of the messaging behind it all. Like I said, Paul seemingly starts off on a bit of a hero's journey, and as the story progresses, he goes a bit of a different, darker, more anti-hero type role. And I love that we kind of get to see that played out naturally. We get all of the background from part 1 of this prophecy that's been foretold on the planet of Arrakis for the Fremen, of this savior who will come in and bring life back to their planet again to make it fruitful and produce water and trees and nature. And so the Bene Gesserit of the mother's order that she's been a part of, Jessica, has been at work for hundreds of years on this planet, and getting to see the effects that this has had on this culture and how much it has impacted the very being of these Fremen people. And Stilgar is a perfect example of a character who is a true believer in all of these prophecies that have been foretold of now. Paul's character living that out and actually being the one to bring that forth. But not only does he fulfill this prophecy, but we get to see it from the Bene Gesserit point of view as well, as we kind of go back to the Reverend Mother from the original movie and seeing him actually kind of follow in the footsteps of this prophecy, but use it to his own advantage to kind of make it backfire back on these Bene Gesserits, and for his own gain and for the gain of the Fremen to kind of throw it in their face, really, as he is this messianic figure that is supposed to come and save these people and stuff according to their traditions and prophecies and stuff that have been instilled from the Bene Gesserits. For him to kind of instill all of that, but do it in such a way that subverts those expectations that not only we have as an audience, but the characters within the movies. It's so interesting and so exciting to see that explored throughout the story. And diving into that just a little bit more, the whole kind of warning against false messianic figures, or just messianic figures in general, it's kind of the root of this story and this movie and the journey that Paul's character goes on, of just a cautionary tale to these messianic figures, making sure there is valid truth in this spirituality and this faith that you have. There's so many interesting and powerfully profound moments and lines throughout this movie given by different characters of the power that this type of religion and belief in a messianic figure can have. I think of lines like where they talk about, well, we can't kill him because that will only make him a martyr and further his mission and his drive that he has and the effect that he's having on these Fremen. And so there's so many interesting moments throughout the way that this whole concept of a Messiah and a savior, it's so profound to see it done in such a genuine and human way, I think. And so I absolutely love the questions that this movie poses about the things we believe, the faith we have. It brings forth so many interesting discussions that I've already had with a number of friends and people who have gotten to experience this movie. And for me, that's probably one of my favorite aspects of the movie, just those themes on the messianic figures and the religion of it all. It's done in such a tasteful and intriguing way that I think is very compelling. Denis Villeneuve leaves his audience with a lot to consider and a lot to think on long after ending this movie. Moving into the production on this film, the production is absolutely astounding. This is visually one of the most beautiful and well-crafted movies I've ever seen. There is loads of special effects and CGI in this movie, and never for a moment did I doubt any of it. It all feels tangible, believable, visually striking. You never question a single moment of anything that is on screen. The cinematography captures it all beautifully. Greg Fraser is the cinematographer for this one, who has become one of my favorite cinematographers. Some other recent work of his includes the Creator movie, Rogue One, some Mandalorian. I think in season 1 Mandalorian, he was a cinematographer on that. He's probably one of my favorite cinematographers working today. And the way that he captures this world of Dune, and not only captures the world itself, he enhances the world building. He gives us more of a look into these characters through different visual angles and perspectives that he puts the camera. So it's beautifully done from a production point of view. The fact that we get to see these actual locations adds to the tangibility of it all. And not only that, we get these beautiful, massive sets at the same time that we get to explore along with it. As I said, the visual effects are seamlessly fantastic, and the costumes and makeup are perfect. They both enhance the culture, they enhance the story, makes it even more believable, more interesting. The costume work and the makeup is another really essential element to a story and a world that Dune is. And so all of the production is absolutely incredible throughout this movie. Next, moving on to the performances and characters. Much like Dune Part 1, the cast for Dune Part 2 is just as stacked, though we have lost some characters from Part 1. They're replaced with other ones that are in many ways just as interesting to get to explore and be introduced to in this film, and that I will hopefully get to continue to see when we move into Dune Part 3 eventually. Really, everyone is a standout in this one. I think pretty much all of the main cast really just own their role. It's never questioned the drive that they have and the respect that they have for these characters and the source material of it all. They really put everything into it to make it an effective performance, and one that all of them really flow well together. All of them, just the chemistry between all the different characters. There's so many ways that everything is structured when certain characters paired together come in conflict with other characters. It's all so well done. The performances all across, to be able to handle a cast as large as this ensemble and to do it so well and effectively, kudos to Denis Villeneuve and each of the cast members that were included in this movie. A few standouts I do want to shed some extra light on is Timothée Chalamet. Obviously, yes, he's the main character. Yes, he's incredible in Part 1, but I think he's even more incredible in this movie. He has so much more to do. There's so much more happening internally with this character on this one that I think is showcased so well through his performance. He's definitely one of the top young actors that we have working today, and I can't wait to continue to see not only where he goes as we progress through the world of Dune in future installments, but also just his acting career in general. So I love everything that he does in this movie. Besides him, Rebecca Ferguson is incredible as Lady Jessica in this movie. She is absolutely ruthless and terrifying in Part 2. She diverts a good bit from the source material in this one as far as what they do with her character, but she really handles it all really well. There's so much more going on with her and her struggles as she is moving into this new role of a Reverend Mother for the Fremen. I won't spoil anything major, but a lot of what happens in this movie is because of her character. She does a lot of behind the scenes kind of work. So while she's not having a ton of screen time throughout the movie, when she is on, you can't take your eyes off her. She's fantastic. And then the final performance I wanted to shed some light on is Austin Butler as Fade Routha. This guy is incredible. This character is absolutely terrifying. You think, some of the Harkonnens from the first movie are brutal and intense. Wait till you meet Fade Routha. Again, we had a huge ensemble cast for this one, and Fade Routha by Austin Butler is one of the performances you are going to walk away talking about. He is absolutely magnetic in this role. It's another character you absolutely can't take your eyes on, and you hang on every inflection that this character has. A lot is communicated through his eyes and his face and reactions to a lot of the things throughout in this one. So he's the last character that I wanted to shed some extra light on. Like I said, everyone is excellent in this movie, but those three especially, those are the ones that really stood out to me coming out of the movie. And then finally, I wanted to talk about the score and the music. We got Hans Zimmer returning for Dune Part 2, and actually from what I've seen in some behind the scenes stuff, he's not even returning. He never stopped. I've seen an interview with Denis Villeneuve where even when they were putting Dune Part 1 in theaters, Hans was still sending samples and stuff to Denis for more music. And Denis like, dude, the movie's in theaters. We're done. Like, take a break. And he's like, no, no, no. We got to keep moving. We got to push this forward further. I want to keep you inspired as we're working on part 2. And it shows in every sense of the word. Now, I thought the Dune Part 1 soundtrack was great. I really enjoyed it. Now, I tended to prefer certain tracks as far as the whole scope of the movie went as an overall soundtrack, as instead of listening to kind of the whole thing entirely. I would pick out a number of songs and tracks that I liked especially and listen to those more frequently. But for Dune Part 2, I like this entire soundtrack. There's new instruments that were invented for this one to make sounds that are just absolutely impactful on the level of the soul, I feel like. I love the music throughout this one. I've listened to the soundtrack 3 or 4 times through already just in the week after seeing this one, and every time I love it more. It expands on so much that was established in part 1, but not only does it continue with many of those different themes and motifs, it expands so much more within the world of the Fremen as we're delving into their cultures more. So much of their culture that we get to explore in this one is through this music that Hans Zimmer has composed for it all. So I absolutely prefer the soundtrack for Dune Part 2. It's one that I will consider one of Hans Zimmer's best works, I think. Him and Ludwig Göransson are going toe-to-toe for me personally as far as best composer working today, I think. And so much of it is because of his work on Dune. So that pretty much wraps up most of, if not all of, my thoughts on this movie. It all comes together fantastically, from the composition to the performances, the production, the direction. All of it is absolutely remarkable and incredible, makes up for one of the best sci-fi movies we've ever gotten, and definitely probably the best movie we're going to get this year. I cannot wait to see what the future of Dune still has in store for us in future projects of movies and TV shows. I know there's a lot in the works. I can't wait to continue it. So let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the movie Dune as well. It's an incredible movie to discuss and talk about. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this video. Long live the fighters.